think we're just all starting to arrive. Perfect. So as we settle into this virtual space together, I invite everyone to take a breath and notice yourself in the physical room that you're in, along with the virtual room that we're entering together. Many of us have spent a lot of time in the virtual space, and I think it's even more pertinent in these spaces to take the time to fully and intentionally arrive together in presence. Because in these interactive online spaces, we're holding this strange complexity of the fact that we're co-creating a virtual room together while also existing as physical bodies in separate physical spaces. So I invite you to breathe into your body, noticing yourself exactly where you are in your body, in the room, in the space you're in. And as you breathe there, and as you start to feel ready, I invite you to start to imagine the other room, the other bodies in this virtual room that we're creating here, breathing with you. You may even take a moment to flip through your videos to see who else is in the room here, to presence yourself with each other, notice who is showing up. And in this way, we can start to hold that complexity of arriving totally present into this virtual space together, while also maintaining our center in our physical bodies and in our physical humanity. So thank you. My given name is Loretta Lauren. I use the pronouns they, them, she, and her, and I am Hollyhock's communications manager. I also have a background in social justice and movement education, and I will be your host for tonight. I'm speaking to you from Hollyhock's main campus, which is situated on the traditional and ancestral territories of the Kaluhus, Klaman, and Holmoko First Nations on what is commonly known as Cortes Island, BC. It's a really beautiful but windy day here. You can check out the ocean over there, and I'm calling from our lodge here. Now, most of the land that many of us are located on today is unceded, meaning that it is stolen and is currently being illegally occupied. So I invite you to feel how that fact lands in your body, and feel free to share that feeling in the chat. This feels especially pertinent today, as yesterday many people celebrated Canada Day, and given the 152 years of colonialization and Indigenous cultural genocide that was central to the formation of Canada, I invite you to question who and what that celebration is really for. If we don't challenge ourselves to look at the racism present in our country and our institutions, we are complicit with the harm and violence. If you're not familiar with the ancestral territories that you're currently occupying, you may find out at native-lands.ca, or I'll post that in the chat. So feel free to find that out and share that in the chat. And if this kind of knowledge is new to you, you can learn more by reading the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with Hollyhock, our mission here and in the work we do in the world, we do programs here on Cortes Island, as well as in Vancouver and now virtually. Our mission is to host and curate meaningful experiences that inspire personal growth and social transformation. So what we're really aiming to do is bringing together the inner work and the outer work required for social change. However, Hollyhock itself has a very many 38 plus year history, and we have also done harm as an organization. As a team that is made up of mostly white and non-Black and non-Indigenous people of color like myself, we are learning alongside you as we deepen our engagement in our own complicity in systemic oppression and white supremacy. And of course, those issues even arose in the context of organizing this very workshop. It's not lost on me or anyone on my team that the work of organizing a workshop on complicity requires that we examine our own complicity in the ways we organize. in a workbook on dismantling racism by Kenneth Jones and Tima Okun, they discuss that one of the many characteristics of white supremacy culture is a sense of urgency. This sense often makes it difficult to encourage thoughtfulness and a more relationship-centered way of operating. And in full transparency, we launched this series with a sense of urgency and have not yet programmed or scheduled the other 2 sessions that we have already committed to. And so our team is going to be taking a pause over the next week to redeliberate and think about how we want to approach future sessions so that we can do so in the way that actually really honors the time it takes to actively deconstruct systems of oppression within our own organizing style. So thank you for joining us today. Thank you for your patience while we learn alongside each other. And thank you for your willingness to dive into this important and challenging work together. So here we are at today's session, Unpacking Systemic Racism, How Does It Live Within You? Our intention here is to creatively process the complexity of the ways that systemic racism lives within each of us and our own complicity in it. I'm really excited to introduce one of our presenters, Laura June Albert, an educator, researcher, cultural organizer, and artist who happens to be a very dear friend of mine who has been a peer, a teacher, and someone who has shown up in great allyship in our community together. Laura June.
Thank you, Loretta. Thank you for opening this space in the way that you did just now, and for the engagement that I know you've had in building this workshop today. I know you to be a deep thinker and a rigorous organizer, and someone who approaches your work with a lot of care and intention, and today is no exception. Thank you. My name is Laura June Albert. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a straight passing queer woman. My last name is Albert, which is a French name. My ancestors came here to Turtle Island many generations ago, mostly 7 and 8 generations ago, some more recently, from England and France. They settled on the East Coast and they migrated west over the course of generations. My parents were born in Plains Cree territory in central Canada, and I grew up myself in Penelakut territory on an island that is now known as Salt Spring. And I moved here to these illegally occupied lands, the lands of the Hunkaminam and Halkaminam and Squamish speaking people. I moved here as an uninvited guest, so I identify as a settler both in terms of my own life arc as well as in my ancestry. My professional lineages are in dance and in social justice and in academics, and I work at this intersection between thinking through the body and thinking with the body, practice as research, oriented towards justice. My interest in whiteness came from a lifetime of curiosity and being called out generously by people of color who love and trust me towards the work. And my research into whiteness deepened in my master's degree, where I looked at the construct of whiteness as a felt experience in the bodies of white people, and how the behaviors of whiteness contribute to white supremacy in the contemporary arts world and also in contemporary dance. Since my graduate research, have been shifting towards the experiences of capitalism, the felt experience of capitalism on the moving body. And I am not accustomed to facilitating workshops where I don't deal explicitly and exclusively with the body, workshops that are more dialogue based. I'll be working with the body shortly, but being invited here today by Khari is a generous act, and I feel honored to be in this space. I work currently as an educator. I founded about 5 years ago a dance school and research organization that's operating now is Laura June Dance, where I facilitate body positive movement research, informed by a recognition of the ways in the lived experiences of capitalism and ableism and white supremacy and heteropatriarchy are in the room. And so I'll be sharing some discourse about whiteness specifically, and ways in which the landscape of whiteness limits white people's ability to show up in this movement, and some tools to unpack that physically. Thank you.
Thank you. And for those of you who have a chance to, I do highly recommend checking out Laura Jane's classes. They are the bomb. So our next facilitator, I'm also really honored to introduce Rebekka Goldsmith, is a professional singer, group facilitator, and coach who believes that when we have full access to our voices, we unlock our creativity, awaken to our full capacity, and catalyze deep and lasting change in our communities. And the last time Rebekka was on campus, I came shortly after she and Khari had done some sort of magical session that left this island completely buzzing, and people are still talking about that session to this day. So welcome, Rebekka.
Thank you so much. It's really a privilege to be here. I want to pay some respect and gratitude for the people who have started this series, who were in the first panel on June 8th, Kim Haxton and Rupindu Sidhu and Parker Johnson and Sophia Robledo-Rower and Karen Carrington, who really began a really rich conversation, very powerful lived experiences, and a real call to action. If you have not watched it, I highly, highly, highly recommend that you watch it and listen. I also want to say thank you to Ling on Hollyhock, on the Hollyhock team, and to Khari, who have called us in really generously and lovingly. I use she, her pronouns. I am cisgendered. I am coming to you right now from traditional Lenape lands, also known as Philadelphia, in the United States. And I am in this work as a facilitator, as a learner, as a partner, as a collaborator, as a person who messes up every day, who continues to show up, who believes in the humanity of everyone and feels the incredible loss in my own self and my ancestors because of white supremacy. And it is the most important work I can do, is to be in conversation and in the work of undoing white supremacy every single day, in as many ways as I have capacity, and as my capacity grows, to be able to do more. In my tradition, I'm Jewish, and in my tradition, going back to 100 CE or BCE, Rabbi Tarfun says that you're not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to desist from it. And I take that as a very important call from 1900 years ago, from my people who were also dealing at the moment with displacement and having to come up with a new way of being. My ancestors fall on two lines. I have Jewish immigrant ancestors to the United States, second generation American, and I have colonizers and settlers who came in the 1600s, 12 generations ago, and were part of the first settling in Jamestown, Virginia. And so my work is to honor and to heal the legacy of both, and to really participate in growing and healing in our work by showing up as a injustice every day, with my heart, with my soul, with my knowledge, and with my skills. I'm going to be working with voice today as a practice that I do personally to explore my own relationship to the work in the world, and to connect myself more deeply to what's important, and to take action, to have the courage to take action, to actually use my metaphoric and my physical voice in the world to show up. So thank you so much for being here, and I'm looking forward to spending this time with you.
Thank you, Rebekka. So just before I introduce our third presenter, I will start to invite folks to turn their videos off as we get into this session. We have found that it will be easier for us to focus on our main facilitators. And so we do ask that you stay present with us, even with your video off. And our third presenter today is Khari Wendell McClelland, who will not be joining us live. He'll be joining us via a pre-recorded video. And at this time especially, there are a lot of demands on the energy of people in the Black community. And so with that in mind, and given the fact that Khari had already donated his time and labor to Hollyhock recently at our Shine the Light event on June 20th, we've decided to go with this pre-recorded video, and he's generously agreed to let us share this interactive exercise with you today. Khari is also an award-winning musician and sought-off facilitator who uses the arts and experiential activities for transformational learning. He has done a lot of amazing work with us at Hollyhock as one of our main facilitator for many of our conferences and sessions, and we are incredibly grateful and honored to have him in our community with us. And I wanted to thank you, Rebekka, for also naming the folks who started this session and the folks who were on that last panel, and our program planner, Ling Lo, as voices who have added to this series and to this work that we're doing. And I want to acknowledge that because of where we've landed with this, that we do have two white women who will be the main facilitators for today, and acknowledge that a lot of the work that other folks have done in contributing to this space today. So without further ado, I believe we will go right into Khari's video. I also suggest that you grab yourself your paper and your pen, as there will be some writing exercises.
So, hi, my name's Khari McClelland. I'm an artist and facilitator, and what I'd like to do is share a little bit of music with you, but also to move through some sort of asking ourselves some questions, but also imagining into a future that we want to see. And then again, sharing some music. And what you'd need for that really is not much. I would say a pen and paper, or if people like to write on their phones or an iPad, that's totally great, or computer, that's wonderful too. And we'll just kind of have a starting off point for some deeper sort of inquiry that you can take up after we're done. Okay, I'll begin with a song. Trembling and shaking, oh God, the children forsaken, since when? Winners keep on taking, said the bread ain't for breaking, since when? Night shift makes it hard, no PTA, no crossing guard, no band-aids, just scars on scars, no therapy, just locks on bars. Left out in the rain, no affection, just growing pains. Dow Jones and his capital gains, no answers, just silent refrains. Trembling and shaking, oh God, the children forsaken, since when? winners keep on taking, said the bread ain't for breaking. Since when? Hello all, Khari McClelland here, artist and facilitator, someone who's worked with the Hollyhock community for over 5 years. And I prepared something that I'm going to read for you now. And it's just sort of going to help me to walk you through this next 15 minutes or so that we're going to be together. So, relationships are complex. Even within ourselves, we feel at times turmoil and challenge. And when we extend that to another person, it's necessary and evident that we will have moments of harmony and moments of disharmony. Now, extend that to a larger community of thousands or more, and it becomes clear that meeting the complex challenges of being in community will yield moments of deep reflection and pause, hopefully followed by effortful movement of people in the direction of greater generosity, humility, and connection. This is the work of a loving community. I'd like to take a moment to ask folks to embrace the time that we have together, to take a deeper look at the disharmony that's in the world in this present moment, and use it as a point of self-reflection. So I'm going to ask a series of questions and maybe just let it sit with you. And those are, what are the harms and injustices that are experienced by people living in poverty? By Black, Indigenous, and other racialized people. By people of different genders and sexual orientations. By those who owned land and those who don't. And by the very earth that gives and sustains all life. I'll just give it a second to let you sit with that. Now, how are we contributing to the systems that make these things possible? And in this moment, hopefully you have some way of writing. Maybe I'll give you a second to grab a pen, a piece of paper. Some people like to write on their phones nowadays, or a pad, and an iPad. I'd invite you to take a moment and make a list right now. Make a list of the ways in which you understand yourself to contribute to the systems that make the harms and injustices that I mentioned before possible. I'll just read those again quickly. What are the harms and injustices that are experienced by people living in poverty? What are the harms and injustices that are experienced by Black, Indigenous, and other racialized people? What are the harms and injustices that are experienced by people of different genders and sexual orientations? By those who do not own land. And again, by the earth that gives and sustains all life. What are the harms and injustices that are experienced by all of those things that I just mentioned? And then how are we contributing to the systems that make these things possible? So I'm just going to give you a moment to sit with that and take some notes. And use this as a sort of jumping off point. I know our time is brief, but if we were in session together, I'd probably give you more time, but I'd suggest just doing a quick free write. Just allow your pen to move freely. Try not to stop yourself. If you can't think of the next thing to write, maybe just write this prompt. How are we contributing to the systems that make these harms and injustices possible? I know as you are writing these things, it may feel unflattering and destabilizing to think about all the ways that we as individuals or communities or groups are part of the disharmony we see in the world, but I'm going to ask you to do it anyway. Again, there are no wrong answers. Just allow yourself to freely write all the things that come to you. And I'm going to give you a couple more minutes. Okay, I'll ask you to just finish that last line, maybe that you're in the process of writing. And then together as a community, I'm going to ask that we take a few breaths together. So breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, one last time, breathe in, and now for some of you, it might even be a good idea to just shake it off. So I'm going to give you full permission, and wherever you're at, to just allow yourself to shake a bit. I was told by a yoga instructor once that I'm a good shaker. I'm sure you've got it in you too. Thanks for taking a moment to move through that. Again, I want to suggest to you that this is just a jumping off point for answering those questions for yourself. But I really appreciate you taking a moment to reflect and to allow yourself to go to those places.
Thanks, Khari. Thank you for that. So Khari has invited us to do some deep thinking. The presenters from the session that was 2 weeks ago or 10 days ago, the one that was facilitated by Kim Haxton that Rebekka mentioned, has also given us some deep thinking. And So my section today is going to be about how that thinking happens in our bodies. And I want to give us tools for how we might deepen our capacity to show up in this moment. The session from 2 weeks ago brought up a number of issues, including abolitionism, defunding the police, Indigenous governance. And so my contribution to today's workshop is going to be about how white folks specifically might engage in the conversation more fully by accessing your body to build your own capacity. So I want to start by naming that the project of liberation is collective. So there's no saviors here. I'm not a savior. The movement for Black lives is the movement of Black liberation is benefits all of us. It benefits me directly. It benefits all of us. And so I want to start there, that this work, the work of building your own capacity in your own body to continue to show up in this movement, to continue to show up in the struggle for justice, is also the work of liberation for the self. I want to be super clear and explicit about that. There are different types of knowledge. There are forms of knowledge that can be accessed through the body that can offer insight and clarity beyond the cognitive and language-based intelligence that is so heavily privileged in capitalism and white supremacy. So there's this rupture of this disconnect between the body and the so-called mind. And that rupture was architected intentionally, and it was foundational in building Western industrialization and the project of imperialism, Western colonial expansion and theft. This disconnect or rupture between the body and mind was foundational in building Western industrialization and colonial expansion. As a result, we carry our bodies around like as sticks to support our heads and our brains, and capitalism has us functioning in extremely ocular-centric ways, like where we privilege the vision of the sense of vision, and we flatten our bodies and dissociate from our instincts just to perform the daily ongoing duties of participating in capitalism and sitting in computers all day. And this dissociation and flattening limits our ability to process. It limits our ability to receive this information and this learning that we need to do as white people. And so connecting to your body and listening to your body is, I believe, absolutely necessary in undoing the colonial violence that has been done to all of our minds. There's knowledge in your body that can support you. And I don't want to connect you to your body for the purpose of making you only feel good, helping you sleep, or distressing you. This is not the wellness industry. The wellness industry and the way that it can be totally rooted in not only cultural appropriation and spiritual gaslighting, but also deeply rooted classism. This is not about only making you comfortable. Accessing your body can reassure you. It can also build your capacity. So I want, in the tools that I'm offering you today, I want this to be about helping you self-soothe so that you can build your capacity to actually show up. So there's a number of typical nervous system responses in white people when confronted about conversations about race. There's a bunch of different ways that we can understand those nervous system responses. One is by calling it a nervous system and calling it fight, flight, freeze, and appease. There's other ways of understanding this response. It can be framed, Michelle Nahanee, who was the founder of an organization called Decolonizing Practices, a Squamish knowledge keeper here, has framed the 5 stages of grieving your complicity in settler colonialism. I think that's how she's languaged it. That's another way of framing this kind of reaction that can happen in the body. And there's many other ways also of framing it, but the feelings that can arise when white folks are confronted with conversations about racial injustice, some feelings that might arise might include defensiveness, your need to justify or defend yourself or people in your family, the need to be seen and recognized and celebrated in your allyship, the need to prove that you're a good white person. You might feel anger at accusations about the behaviors of white people. You might feel a desire to run away and hide and shut it out. And so when those feelings arise, I trust that the folks that are here are folks who want to be dismantling this, these tendencies in ourselves. And so I want to offer that when they come up, when these feelings come up in you, and you know them, you're familiar with them, these feelings of anger, defensiveness, a desire to run away and hide, I want to offer to you that you can self-soothe, and you can turn to your body, your own body, and build your own capacity to be uncomfortable. And you can build that capacity and use it to expand your resilience in these conversations, to continue to be uncomfortable, to expand and further expand your own capacity to be uncomfortable, so that you can build your own efforts to show up and turn it out in this movement in all of the spaces that are available to you. So my intention is to support your nervous system, to give you tools to support your own nervous system and to support your own embodiment, so that you have more grounded capacity to show up in this liberation struggle. We all need support to wherever you are in position to this work, whether your work is in political spaces that you have access to, your spheres of influence, if your work is to amplify, if your work is in domestic space, if your work is in administrative space, systemic space, if you're coming into conflict with institutions or with people in your family or with people in your community, whatever it is, wherever you're showing up in this work, I want you to be supported through your body, because we need you. We need you. So I'm going to lead us through a little bit of movement. Can I get a time check on how much longer we'd like me to go? Maybe Loretta could chime in. I'm going to anticipate about 10 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to invite us to step away from your computer. You can continue to watch me if you'd like, or you can just go with the sound of what's happening. So we'll begin by stepping away from your computer. You can push your computer away from you and connect to the chair that you're sitting on, or you can stand. If standing is available to you, it's not better though. You can also sit in a chair. And so it's interesting because people have offered us already some shaking and some bouncing.
Hi, Laura Jane, sorry for not chiming in earlier. I was having a connectivity issue, but 10 minutes sounds great.
Okay, great. So let's start with a little shake, building off of the shake that Khari gave us. I'm going to lead us into like a little bit of grounding in our own bodies, and then give you some quick tools that you can access when feeling those waves of defensiveness, and also when in conflict. So first we'll take this little shake, and then we'll find a little gentle bounce. And if you're sitting in a chair, you can access a bounce through your arms, sitting just through your arms if standing isn't available or safe or comfortable for you. So just this little bounce, little easy, soft bounce. And then sense into and feel the part of you that is lowest and that is connected to a hard surface. So for me, that's my feet on the floor. If you're sitting in a chair, it might be the bottom of your pelvis on a chair. And just sense in and feel into, through this little easy bounce, gentle, easy bounce, just sense into that firmness and that density in the floor or the chair that you're connected to. And then we'll take a little bit of a walk forward and back through the feet. A little gentle walk. If you're in a chair, you could rock side to side. A little gentle walk forward and back in the feet, feeling the connection of your feet to the floor. And start now in this gentle little walk to see what your eyes are seeing. Take a moment to see what's around you, the color and the pattern and the textures and the light that are around you. Whether you're rocking or changing your feet side to side, front and back. Start to simply see what you can see. Instead of looking past it and tunneling with your vision and narrowing your vision towards your thoughts, instead arrive at what's in front of you and allow your seeing to simply be here. And then widen your peripheral vision. Widen your intake of information from the sides and tops and bottoms of your eyes. Start to widen your intake so that you're seeing from a wider place than this narrow tunneled place. And then as you're walking and seeing widely, sense into your back body. We'll call your back from your eyes, around the top of your head, between your ears, down your neck, the backs of your arms, the whole back of your trunk, pelvis, backs of your thighs, behind your knees, the backs of your calves, and the bottoms of your feet. And just sense into that space, giving yourself a felt reminder that you have a back, that you have depth and that you have volume and you have extension in space. You're not a flat surface that only is a narrow seeing surface. Remind yourself that you have a back and that you can bring that back with you as you move. So this little gentle walking, you're welcome to come back to a bounce if the bouncing helps you access it. And now from this place of sensing your back, we'll start to bring in the ability to see out your back. So this possibility of getting a felt sense of the room that you're in or the space that you're in, widening into your perception that is available to you through your back body. Sensing where the walls are in relationship to your body. See feeling is another way that this is languaged by a teacher that I worked with for a time named Lee Soufei, who's an absolutely brilliant genius organizer and educator in Vancouver. See feeling. See feeling through your back body to get a sense of where you are in space. And then you can continue to stand and rock through your feet, or you can come back to a chair. I'm just going to come closer to the computer. Take your hands, a little rubbing with your hands, and place them on your neck, finding the lumpy vertebrae below your neck, like in your upper back, and then trace those vertebrae up side to side with your fingers up towards your skull. So I'm taking my fingertips, I'm finding either side of the lumpy vertebrae below my neck, and then I'm tracing that up towards my head and up towards my skull. I'm tracing those bumpy, bony surfaces up towards my skull. And as you do this, remind yourself that you have these very firm structures, these very dense, solid structures inside your body that are there to support you. Yeah. We'll take a little rubbing onto your chest, the area on the front of your chest, this broad bony surface, the sternum, a little patting and rubbing, and then we'll tap with the fingertips on the chest, tap on the collarbones. We'll brush out your arms, brushing out the arms and out the fingertips. Yes. We'll take your fingertips and tap around on your head, a little gentle tapping on your head. And onto your forehead and collar and cheekbones, forehead and cheekbones. Come on back to your chair or couch or floor or bed or whatever it is that you're sitting or laying on for this workshop, and notice the sensations in your body and where your sensations are located, how you feel differently physically, maybe than you did before we did this little embodiment work. So this is a very short, abbreviated score around embodiment. These are tools that you can use. A few quick and easily available tools that you can use in an ongoing way are feeling into the denseness of what you're touching. So if, for example, you're in a high stress, maybe meeting where you're speaking truth to power, or if somebody is confronting you and they're calling you out, you can connect through your feet or through your pelvis, the part of you that is connecting to a firm surface, sense the density of that surface and sense into your bones. And use your bones to support you, and use your bones to support your voice. Another thing you can do is take your fingertips and do some tapping near the bones that are close to the surface. So like the sternum here, the bones are quite superficial. The sternum and the collarbone area, your bones are quite superficial, and tapping into those bones will also help remind you and self-soothe you. And then sensing and feeling into the depth and volume of your back body, reminding yourself that you have a back and that you have that whole back is there with you all the time. So my hope is that these small little tools, they can be cultivated with practice, are ways for you when you find yourself in the ends of your nervous system, in that defensive response, in that what is often called white fragility, when you feel triggered, reactive. And also when you're in positions of speaking truth to power, when you're in confrontational systems with institutions or with police or with people who hold power over you in your life, and you're speaking to them and naming power, that you can also access this body-based strength, body-based integrity, the structures of support that are available to you through your body. And that can be a lot to remember in the moment. And my hope is that that my offering today has encouraged you to use your body as a resource rather than to think that the only way to show up in this movement is through intellectualization. The further we can resource ourselves with the fullness of the bodies and bring our bodies into the movement with us, I think the more profound, the more sustainable, the more genuine, the less harm, the more genuine the work will be, and also the less harm we will do as white people as we show up in the movement. That's me.
Thank you so much, Laura June. I'm a big fan of your work, and I really appreciate the way that you called attention to accessing the body as a necessary piece in this work. And I really hope folks can take that piece in building their resiliency as they move through more learning and action. So now we are going to return to Khari's offering before we hear from Rebekka. It'll be another writing exercise, so you can grab your pen and paper again. And here you will start to imagine the world you want to see.
Now, we're going to do something a little bit different. I want you, for a moment, to imagine the world you really deeply want to see. And in as vivid a fashion as possible, think about the structures, the governments, the economies, the organizations, the neighborhoods, and the families that you imagine that would comprise this world that you want to see. Really allow yourself to go there, to feel into what that would feel like, and to really imagine what comprises this world. What are the pieces that make this world work? In the same way that before you had a pen and paper, hopefully you still have it, or whatever devices you're using to write, I want you to write these ideas down too. The ideas that help you to really give shape to the world that you want to see. And I also want you to take yourself seriously. I say that because the world that we are currently living in was born out of the imaginations of human beings, and that we too have this power. And so I want you to just take a moment to think about the kind of world that you want. And maybe even what kind of world our larger Hollyhock community wants. So I'll give you a second to continue writing and thinking into this question. And what kind of housing is there? Where do we get our food? What does work look like? What's the quality of life for all of our community members, for our family members? What does work-life balance look like? What do economies look like? What does money look like? And land use? And what's the state of our environment, and what are we leaving for the generations to come? I don't know about you, but I'm imagining a really beautiful place for us to be together. And I feel as though I can already feel the worlds that you're imagining, and it's feeding me and making me feel really good about what's possible for our world and for our communities and for our neighborhoods. And that those who have often been left behind or forgotten will no longer be left behind or forgotten, that those who have faced and experienced so much harm and injustice will no longer face those harms and injustices, and that this generous, beautiful earth that we inhabit will be a place of health and well-being for many, many generations to come.
Another world's not only possible. On a quiet day, I can hear her breathing. Another world's not only possible. On a quiet day, I can hear her breathing. Words from Arundhati Roy and music by Ali Halpert. Khari invites us into this incredible invitation for a world that's possible. And I find my hope lifting, and I find my desire to live into that imaginary space, that place that we can create. I want to live there. And I also hear his incredibly generous invitation as a deep call to action. Because the only way that we can get there, and I'll speak for myself, but really collectively, is if we walk every day towards it. So I have to show up and I have to do the work. And that's the best way I can honor Khari's invitation. So was invited into this conversation with you to talk about how systemic racism, how white supremacy lives in our body, and also to explore our complicitness in it. And like Laura June, I am also very focused on what it means to be in the white body. And I say white supremacy so that I am always called into action for myself. Racism, it is a system of racism that holds us in the ways that it does in great harm and oppression. And it is white supremacy that makes us complicit and culpable. And so I want to lift up Laura June's words around disconnect of the body and a way of returning to our body, of which the voice is a primary connector. It brings our internal to the external. It gives us a chance to be brave and courageous. And I'm going to do some work with us over the next bit of time. And I want to invite you to sing and make sound with me as you feel, actually a little bit past as you feel comfortable. And to know, as Dr. Isai Barnwell says, that when we sing, we take a position in the universe. This is an act of courage. It is an act of locating ourselves. It is an act of practicing what it means to give voice to the things we believe in. And it's a practice of making sound that shows up in the way we talk in the world, in the way we listen in the world, in the way we participate in collective voice, in the way we know when it's our moment to speak the truth. To speak truth to power, to say it's not okay, to show up and really stand strong. And so with Laura June's incredible grounding, possible for you as well, then really opening your ears and your heart and listening full on, and maybe listening to the sound of your own voice in your head. That's a place to start too. So the place I know to start, that is a practice that I've been working with since I've been really unlearning white supremacy, is to practice my relationship with my ancestors and to call in and ask for support. And so I'm going to do that right now, and I'm going to do it with a sound practice, and I'm going to invite you to do it either in your home or to listen and to welcome in your ancestors and your guides, maybe people you've known, people you haven't known, but just to open that wide lens like Laura June gave us in our field and invite our ancestors in. So the first thing that I'm going to offer is just the beginning, if you haven't already started to make sound where you are, beginning with breath. To take some deep breath. Find that place of grounding that Laura June talked about. And just draw your attention to breath and the awareness that your body is in conversation every moment with life. And in a moment, I'm going to ask us to move into some sound. Long tones held just on one note per breath. Any sound, there's no wrong way to do this, but just to start to feel into the sounds of our voices. I'm going to hold a long tone with you. I'm going to change it maybe every time. Stay where you are. Sing more if it comes to you. Just to be in the exploration of locating yourself in this moment. In this silence, letting the sound land and just noticing what has shifted for you. And if you are able to notice and enter it into the chat so others can see what's happening in our collective body right now. Again, these are also practices, sound practices that help us build resilience, that help us locate ourselves for when we are in situations where we want to run, where we want to disassociate, where we want to disconnect, where we want to get angry and we want our emotions to take over. They ground us. They let us re-enter and re-engage. And for me, I know that if my Black and Brown and Indigenous friends and community can't stop and walk away from something, I can't either. So how can I keep being in relationship and showing up and growing something that, quite frankly, has been designed not to make me have to have this skill set? Thank you, everyone who's writing. So we're going to move into the next practice. The question, am I doing enough? This is a question particularly that comes up every time there's a moment. People rush and want, and I find myself doing it too. It's not an out there thing, it's an in here thing. It's, am I doing enough? And my wise friend and teacher, Kirin Bhatti, Kirin Bhatti, said to me, the question, that's a wrong question, am I doing enough? Because what it does is it gives me a yes or no, and it either allows me to feel good about myself and pat myself on the shoulder, or it allows me to feel like I'm not doing enough, and it gives me a chance to check out. What she said is that the question is really, what is my capacity? What am I capable of? And to me, that's a much more expansive question. I feel the spokes coming out of my body in different directions, in the ways that Khari has asked, in the ways that Laura June has asked. Where am I engaged in the system that I have capacity to say or do something? Where am I engaged with my family? Where am I engaged in my own learning and my own blind spots? Where am I engaged in my listening and my deepening? Where am I engaged in my community, my immediate community, my neighborhood? These are the questions. Do I have capacity? And so I want to invite us to really focus on that question through sound. What am I capable of? What is my capacity to end white supremacy? I'm also just thinking about Parker Johnson, who also last week said, you have to cast your bucket where you are. So it's important. Let us be where we are and move from there. I've got this body to march with. I've got this mouth to speak with. I've got these ears to listen. I've got this heart to love with. I've got this body to march with. I've got this mouth to speak with. I've got these ears to listen. I've got this heart to love with. I've got this body to march with. I've got this mouth to speak with. I've got these ears to listen. I've got this heart to love with. Listen, 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 listen to your own answers in this moment. What is my capacity? What do I have to give? I've got this body. I've got this mouth. I've got these ears. I've got this heart. Listen, 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 listen. Listen in your own body for the wisdom. What do you have? What's your capacity? Let the answers come to you from your body, from your heart, from your elbow, from your pinky, from your gut, from your liver, from your kidney, from the water that's moving inside of you every time you sing, every time you make sound. What is my capacity? And if you want to enter that into the chat, what's coming for you, please do. I've got This is a harder question. It's a harder question. Sit with this question. It's a query. What is my capacity? Yeah. Real truth in the chat right now. What if we all believed we belong? What if we all believed we belong? What if we all believed we belong? To each other we belong. What if we all believed we belong? To each other we belong. What if we all believed we belong? To each other we belong. I will raise my voice for justice. Let me remember the courage in my soul. I will raise my voice for justice. Let me remember the courage in my soul. I will raise my voice for justice. Let me remember the courage in my soul. What will you raise your voice for? What will I raise my voice for? What will I raise my voice for? And if you're answering in the chat, I will raise my voice for, I'm going to try and weave us into a bit of a collective sound in this virtual space. I will raise my voice for children, for all children, to speak on the side of the oppressed and not be silent so as not to be on the side of the oppressor. Dismantling the system should be done by allowing a voice of those affected. The seventh generation, the seventh generation, the seventh generation. Nothing about us without us, nothing about us without us, nothing about us without us, nothing about us without us. When there's disconnection between people, words, and actions, I will raise my voice. I will speak up and speak out for Black lives. I will raise my voice for those who are not afraid, who are not heard, and those that will listen. I will raise my voice for value without money, for truth, for justice, and my ancestors. Ancestors. I will raise my voice for indigenous people, surviving genocide, for those who cannot speak, for those whose stories have not yet been told, for children to be the change, honor of Mother, the earth, for love, for love, for love, and drinking water for everyone. I will raise my voice for those who need a white privilege megaphone. I will raise my voice against my family's conditioning, and on and on and on. I will raise, I will raise, I will raise, I will raise. I will never give up, never give up, never give up. I will never give up, never give up, never give up. I will never give up, never give up, never give up. And because we are working with patterning and repatterning and wounds that we're healing, my friend Christina reminded me today that when people are hurt, that they often compensate. Like, have you ever had an injury or a foot, like a broken foot or a sprained ankle or a hurt shoulder, and you start to kind of limp, or you start to keep the pain off of that area, and then all the other parts of your body start to hurt. You get a shoulder ache or a neck ache, you can't sleep, all this overcompensating. But what she said that athletes do is that they lean in. They work with the pain. They continue to keep their body moving in the direction of health and healing by doing the work the way that it wants to move, and not looking away, and not moving our body into another direction, and not compensating. So our work is to pattern our bodies, is to lean in to this, as white people particularly, and to repattern, and to get the scar tissue out of the way, because we need healing too, because we are not we are not, our humanity is at stake. Our humanity is at stake, and the collective humanity if is at stake, and as long as we're dehumanizing. And so I'm going to have us just repattern this experience. And as we go through it, just one more time, just with sound, to reconnect to these places inside of you that hold wisdom, that hold grounding, that hold resilience, that hold courage, so that we stay in it together. Because as Laura June said, we need everyone. We need us all in it every day. Starting with sound. And if you can put all the words to all the pieces on here, Laurel, that would be great. Ooh, start that sound and ground yourself. Ooh. 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 Listen, 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 listen. I've got this body to march with, I've got this mouth to speak with, I've got these ears to listen, I've got this heart to love with, I've got this body to march with, I've got this mouth to speak with, I've got these ears to listen, I've got this heart to love with. What if we all believed we belong to each other, we belong? What if we all believed we belong to each other, we belong? What if we all believed we belong to each other, we belong? I will raise my voice for justice. Let me remember the courage in my soul. I will raise my voice for justice. Let me remember the courage in my soul. I will never give up, never give up, never give up. I will never give up, never give up, never give up. I will never give up, never give up, never give up. Return to your breath and silence and listening. And in this last moment, returning once again to Khari's invitation to imagine a world that is possible, that may already be on its way. May already be on its way. What is here for us? Another world's not only possible. On a quiet day, I can hear her breathing. Another world's not only possible. On a quiet day, I can hear her breathing. She is on her way. She is on her way. She is on her way. Keep breathing, keep listening. May we all see each other on the road. And I'm going to turn it back to you, Loretta.
Laura, June, were you going to do a closing for us before
I just want to say thank you, Rebekka. That was really powerful. This is the first time that we've worked together in this capacity, and I'm grateful for these teachings. Thank you.
Likewise.
Yeah, thank you both. I want to thank you both for showing up, not just today, but consistently in this work. And I also want to thank Khari for the beautiful offering of that video that inspired much of this workshop. We started this session with this question: unpacking systemic racism. Where does it live within me? Where am I complicit? And these practices that we've been offered here are beautiful, creative, and somatic ways to expand our capacity to engage in this work. And I think that's really important to remember, that the purpose of this work is to undo these systems of oppression within ourselves so that we can also undo them in the greater world, and that these practices cannot exist alone. So they are, in my mind, necessary to this work, but not sufficient. And this is just a pin drop, because this is a lifelong practice for us all, in undoing the ways that systemic oppression and systemic racism lives within our own bodies and the spaces we operate in. And I just want to acknowledge that much of the material today was white-centered, not just in the facilitators, but also in the content. While these practices are also important and supportive for people who live in bodies that are Black, Indigenous, mixed race, and people of color, and other people in oppressed positions, that things operate a little bit differently, and I just want to acknowledge that. And so I hope that this workshop was sufficient for today, knowing that there's just so much more in this work. And so as we wrap this, and I encourage you to take this work into your everyday, to continue to question how you're being complicit, and to use these resources of the body, of the voice, to shift that, to make change in your own world and the worlds around us. I also wanted to thank you all for not just showing up, but also your financial contributions. We raised over $1,500 that we've decided to donate to two causes. One is Afro Van Connect, which is an organization in Vancouver that empowers the voices of African descent youth through conversation, collaboration, creation, and performance. And we're very lucky to have two of the co-founders, Cor Cassé and Day Shields, in our community, who have participated in some programs at Hollyhock, and we love the work that they do. And the second organization is the Klahoos First Nations. We're donating to their paddle journey. Every year they take a paddle to Sunamuk, and this process is a part of their reclamation of their culture and their teachings to their youth. And to us, it was really important that we give back to the peoples whose land we're currently occupying here on Cortes Island. And I also want to thank again the people who, some of the predecessors to this series with the last recording. Again, if you didn't get a chance to watch it, please do. Kim Haxton, Parker Johnson, Sophia Rauer, Roop Sidhu, Karen Mahan Carrington, Ling Lo, and everyone who's been contributing to these series. We will continue in some fashion. We have not decided exactly how yet, so thank you for your patience as we learn how to do this work in the way we organize and in the content that we're offering. So what I love to do as a closing here is you can turn your videos back on, unmute yourself, and just take a chance to say goodbye to one another. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Rebekka.
Bye,
Thank you, Lord Jim.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Beautiful.